Hello and welcome to the first ever Octagon wearables video. Technically speaking, this would be the first video in the chronological sequence of videos as far as what has been 3D printed. Um, in terms of recording, I'm actually making this video to introduce the concept of a glove as a wearable long after the actual stuff that you see in front of you has been 3D printed. But I'm just going to kind of give a quick explanation, and I've got my nephew basically showing me how the 3D print actually resulted. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm just going to go through a few pictures. As far as an individual, the first time that I've ever done some 3D printing was basically for a project called Nanobot. You hear me talk about it here and there in a few videos. Officially or strictly speaking, it's not part of Octagon only because I didn't think of recording anything back then. But maybe at some point in time we'll circle back. But at this point in time, the significance of the Nanobot, without getting into it, is it was my first venture into 3D printing. It required some control, so basically a microcontroller like we're getting into now, but it was pretty relative to what we're going to be doing with the microcontroller here at Octagon, at least on the first pass. It was pretty complicated. So after that I decided to refactor the goals and basically make a glove. You're going to hear me say in videos later than this, why a glove? There's actually no reason for a glove. Whether this should actually be part of the Octagon fold could be debated, I guess. But overall, the glove is kind of how I learned how to work with 3D printing, understand the tolerances, understand what's too thin, what breaks and what doesn't break. And also, if you look at the latching mechanism on the back here, there's a lot of development of some mechanisms that basically Octagon is going to be basically taking advantage of. So basically, this is part of the journey, and this is kind of where the journey began. And for me, it's a nice little side project. Making a glove is actually very complicated, and there was quite a few iterations put in, mostly as a project between myself and my nephew, just for kicks. But basically, at some point in time, I decided that I knew enough about 3D printing and just moved on to the Octagon stuff. So this is version 1, or version 0.0 or version 0.1 of the glove, and there was quite a few iterations to actually get here. So if we look at the white finger that's here, this is actually the first version that was done. So I measured off the width of my finger. This is actually for an index or the middle finger. Basically for me, those two fingers of mine are the same diameter. And if we look at what we're looking at here, we have the palm actual configuration. This is not the first time this knuckle piece, which is the top part, was actually printed. But this is the first time I put it together with the back of the hand, and I'm going to say something that goes down all the way to the wrist. And the latching mechanism that I talked about, and some print-in-place hinges. The first version of these is actually sitting over here. And basically, this whole piece was quite big, and I was traveling, so I basically set this 3D print off for the knuckles and the palm, the hand, the first time that was integrated, left the print, and my nephew was kind enough to basically try it on. So stepping through some of the iterations, if we look at the fingers, it started off on this finger over here. We switched to another filament, which is this metallic or copper-like filament, and basically did this finger over here. You can see it's the same width, maybe a little bit narrower. If it's narrower, is that I actually managed to make the walls a little bit skinnier. And if we look at that from here, this finger here is actually the same width as that one. It's just the last joint is actually smaller. And you can see that it actually steps down. There's a number of reasons for that, which I'll probably get into, or I do get into in later videos that are already recorded, and I'll be making them available after this. But overall, what we have here is the palm. We got room for the thumb, which will be further developed later on. But effectively, if we look at the three individual items, which you can see here, I started off with the hinge, I guess, closest to the palm, closest to the inside of the hand, as opposed to the back of the hand. and you're going to see that that hinge point is going to be moving backwards. And one of the reasons for that is that as you flex your finger, basically the asymmetry, this distance here crunches up quite quickly. And then basically if we look at the backside, that actually lengthens. So if you stick your finger up in here and you're touching the end, with the hinges this far forward, you basically flex your fingers in, and then basically your fingers aren't touching the end anymore. So the hinge has got to be as close to the center as you can. And then when you move that, which I did on the second finger, which is more evolved, you can see that this overall piece here basically narrows up. So this is coming up at a 45 degree. So as I move this back, this piece here gets narrower. And it got to the point where it was so narrow that basically it wouldn't actually hold. And you can see here I've got a piece of tape. So that's a little bit of an explanation with the finger. If we look at it, I never really got to printing the ring finger and the pinky finger. And you can see from the actual hand how the pinky finger is actually sticking out and how it's not spaced. My hand's a bit bigger than my nephew's, but we're not too far off in size. But basically, there's a bit of an angle between each of the fingers, and you're going to see, I'll talk about that angle in later videos and how it actually increases. So with that being said, this is an introduction of a glove. In Octagon, we are going to be doing wearables. The wearables are going to be kind of side products overall. But basically, it's, like I said, still part of the journey, still part of the IP. And I wanted to basically introduce everybody to that. We're going to see probably this wrist piece coming up in later development of this glove. So without further delay, I'll basically play my nephew's video.
So I figured I would just make a video and then send it to you. So everything fits relatively well. I did mess up a few times, like a couple of these finger sockets I knocked out of place by accident. But the joints fit nicely together. I also accidentally snapped the little handle here, but they connect relatively easily. It's a little tricky to get both these, I guess, notches, whatever you'd call them, in position. It's also pretty tough because of how close your wrist is, or the wrist part compared to the fist part are. And it's kind of tricky to get both of the clips in at the same time. Like you can see, I'm struggling to get it back in, but they fit well. The only dilemma with it is like I said, the fact that it doesn't click in too well together. Actually, I think I just figured out the issue to that. Yeah, you just gotta rest it down. But yeah, it fits well together. This joint, once again, like I said, it broke, and it also has a hard time clicking into place because the joint itself, like the little hook, was too big. Like this end here was too big. See if I can get it to click back on. Yeah, you kind of have to get something to help you click it back into place. Oh, and this one fell back. Yeah, this one, like I said, it snapped, so that's on me. But other than that, it fits pretty well. I gotta figure out, there's a little bit of overhang here. But other than that, gauntlet fits well. It's the size of my hand. Like I said, other than this breaking, no other gripes.